we were really lucky that it did not happen to us. Maybe we would become the same. But everything that I found out about 68 was very useful for us in 89. There were, as you noticed, such similarities that it was incredible. For example, the first declaration or memorandum that we sent to the government, that we drafted on the third day of the revolution, had 10 points, and the 10 points are very similar to the points they had, like abolishing the main rule of the Communist Party, releasing political prisoners, freedom of speech, freedom of media, freedom of gathering, because like here, once more than 3 people met, it was already suspicious, etc. So it's really interesting, I think. And that is really, we saw a film yesterday about time, how time changes things or does not change things. I see it actually almost as if everything is repeating itself. The Nietzsche type of idea that we maybe relive things. And that helps me, I must say. I probably need this belief, because that helps me against desperation that, for example, in Czech Republic or in Slovakia, we are a little bit back now, 30 years back. And it's not the communist power that holds media and economic power and secret services. It's the oligarchs, it's the people who became rich because they corrupted and tunneled everything. And some of my friends are in deep depression, and they really don't understand how could it have happened to us. And my defense against that melancholy or depression is that I think more and more, I also teach history, maybe that's why. I think history repeats itself or follows a kind of sinuses type of movement. And so there are heights, revolutions, uprisings, people being courageous, and people thinking like one. In a demonstration, you think that you are all one person. And then everything slowly going down, everybody thinking more about himself, his family, his children, his little house, his little garden. And usually people let the politicians deal with politics. And then comes a very deep point, maybe in Czechoslovakia, in Czech and Slovak Republic. It is the deepest point now in what we have had in terms of democracy, freedom of speech, etc. And there is a hope for me that there will be an up, maybe helped by today's students or today's young people. And I try to help them. I teach history and diplomacy in university, American students, but I am in contact with Czech students as well. And I try to give them hope and tell them that things will be better again. But that the battle will never be really won or over. I came to that conclusion when I was writing my book. I am the only person from the 10 who wrote a book about it. Actually, I published my personal diaries from between 1980, when I was 14, and it was really deep communist desperation here and in Czechoslovakia and Hungary and Poland, everywhere. It was absolutely horrible. Solidarity just was going on the ground in Poland. And I was a 14-year-old depressed little girl. All my friends were leaving for exile, and I thought I was just lonely. And I published the diaries until 1990. So after the Velvet Revolution, I became a public figure, a diplomat. I was a mother of a lovely daughter that is now 30. I went to Paris to become cultural attaché of our embassy, and everything seemed to be really very, very high. And I thought it will stay like that. So I am now working on the continuation, because everybody asks me, and what happened then? How could it happen that we are again so deep? So maybe that's why this feeling of mine when I was rereading my personal diaries and editing them, and when I was for 3 years looking for photos, many are in the documentary, because I probably have the biggest archives, because the boys are just messers, they threw everything away. And I was keeping, like a careful little girl student, I was keeping archiving everything. Maybe that made me think, Jesus Christ, things are really repeating itself.
When you were, I don't know, looking at television or seeing what's going on in Prague in 1989, did you ever believe that this movement, this revolution will be successful?
Well, I was actually living in the United States. I left for the United States in 1970, I think, and I returned for a first quick visit during the revolutionary days of 1989. You will have seen on the second documentary, there was this monstrous demonstration of what is estimated to have been 1 million people, which was addressed by Václav Havel and a couple of the student leaders. And that was the day, I think on the 5th day of the revolution, that I managed to get back into Prague from the United States. And at that point it was clear to me that to validate the 20 years that I had spent in the US, I have to come back. Because originally the reason how I would justify my even staying in the US once I had gotten there in 1969 was, okay, I'm not going back to Czechoslovakia now, but I will do my best to learn as much as I can in the US, and then in the fullness of time I'll put it to good use back in my own country. And the time came in 1989. So that was the moment when I decided I have to go back. I have to go back home, and it took another few months before I managed to arrange my affairs in the US before I returned home. But even during that one day of the million-strong demonstration, it was pretty clear to me that this is opening a completely new chapter in the life of the country. Now, during those 20 years in America, I started out intending to go back after a couple of months, planning to go back, then hoping to go back, then dreaming of going back. But my father, who was born in 1900, during his life, lived through 5 or 6 different regimes. I was pretty sure that sooner or later the 7th regime would come about. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Yes, you did. So you are very confident that the change will come. Both of you have or have had right after 1990s, let's say European careers. You both seem to be very huge believers in this European idea. Is this something that you now feel you have to fight in the light of what's going on with the new changes in the Czech Republic? Do you think that now is the time for again going to a battle for supporting these ideas?
Well, the situation in the Czech Republic now has parallels throughout Europe. Some parallels are more pronounced, some are less pronounced. One of the less pronounced parallels is the fact that the high power in the Czech Republic is to a significant extent in the hands of oligarchs as Monica mentioned. In Slovakia it's even worse. And these are people who largely are looking out for other interests than the interests of a European Union. The other aspect, which is more pronounced in other parts of Europe, is the general rise of anti-European, frequently populist political parties. In Slovakia, they have an outright Nazi party. In the Czech Republic, they've got there's an extreme right, which is the most bizarre anti-European, anti-everything party. And these are tendencies which one does see here and there, even growing in other parts of Europe. In the Netherlands, the AFD in Germany, the French Marine Le Pen party, and so on. So the battle, as Monica mentioned, the struggle for the orientation of the country is a non-stop struggle. Fortunately for us in the Czech Republic, the key political parties are stating that they are pro-European. Thank goodness for that. Okay, but the population, by and large, is the least enthusiastic about the EU of any country, of any EU member. And that's a difficulty. That's a difficulty which is, to my mind, up to the politicians to sort out. Personally, I feel that there's an awful lot to be done, but I have gotten lazy and tired and old and decrepit, so I leave that to the younger generation.
Thank you. I spent almost 30 years trying to make Czechs Europeans again, and showing to Europeans that Czechs are Europeans. I went to Ministry of Foreign Affairs after the revolution, unlike many of my colleagues who went to do directly politics. And it had two reasons. One was that I thought that a small country like Czech Republic, or then Czechoslovakia, cannot be an island in the sea of uncertainty. So those two goals that we set for ourselves in the new Czechoslovak diplomacy, which was membership in NATO and membership in European Union, that was really for me like two homeworks that have to be done. And the second reason was private, because I had Emma, my daughter, was only 2 and something, so I thought diplomacy will be a more regular job than politics, which it wasn't. But anyway, what was surprising is that the membership in NATO and then the membership in European Union, Václav Havel, myself and a couple of other friends, we were organizing the campaign for the yes in the referendum. Yes, we want to be members of European Union. And it was relatively easy. We had 77% of participation, and 57% of people said, yes, we want to be members of European Union. Now, Václav Havel is dead. If there was a referendum today, I don't know whom would I ask to help me to organize a new campaign. And as Karel said, I don't know exactly how to talk to people outside of Prague and outside of big cities and tell them that Europe is us, that Europe is our home, and that we cannot make it without Europe. We, the Czechs, we, the Slovaks, we, the Polish, but even the French. I spent 10 years in France. If the French were left to themselves, it would be a disaster. And not to speak about Germans, etc. I think we really need each other, and that it was an illusion that the Westerners had in 1990s, that we need them and they are so nice to take us and embrace us in this. No, they need us as well, because they need this experience of how quickly democracy can turn into populism, nationalism. They almost had Marine Le Pen as the French president when I was there. Can you imagine? And nobody wanted to listen when I told them that can happen, darlings. So I think that this is absolutely vital, because in the history it was always United States that came to our help and saved Europe. First World War, Second World War. We basically are grateful to the Americans that independent Czechoslovakia exists. President Wilson has streets and squares in Czechoslovakia, etc. This time, Mr. Trump will not come and help Europe. And in Russia, we have a Mr. Putin who is maybe even more dangerous than an old half-dead Brezhnev, Chernenko, Andropov, if you remember all those, Jesus Christ, figures. Mr. Putin is really dangerous, and he was now elected for 6 more years. The combination of a strong China, where they try to create a real dynasty, a strong Russian leader, Mr. Putin, who admires probably Stalin or these strong figures, Tsar from the Russian history, and this crazy, weird American president. I have twice as many students this semester, I said it yesterday, from America, because people of your age are running away from America. They want to be in Europe, and they want to learn about civil resistance and revolutions and how to organize a demonstration. My course is, there was a waiting list for my course this semester, because young Americans are desperate. They don't know how it happened, and suddenly Donald Trump is their president. And they would want to be loyal, and they would want to be true Americans, but they cannot. Looking at this weirdo, how can you be? So I think Europe as a region has to stick together, has to be stronger than ever. We have to really solve this problem with defense and security, because we cannot rely on Americans at all, and we face the danger not only from Russia, that we always face, but also from China and elsewhere. So it's more dangerous than ever.
Before we continue, if you have any questions, feel free to just raise a hand and join in the conversation.
You look like my students, and they never want to start. Shall I point at someone?
And also, if Karen and Monica, if you want to ask something to our audience, just feel free, because maybe this way they will get engaged more easily, let's say.
I would want to ask if you share this opinion of mine, that if we do not stick together as Europeans, the 28 countries or 27, whatever it will be, we are lost, because divided we will fall. Do you agree with that? And what can we do for it? What can you young people do for it? Because I will be soon as old and tired as Kara.
We have
Maybe another 30 years.
We have a potential answer there. That's a difficult one.
I don't know how I should formulate my answer. We should teach everyone what you just said right now. If we don't stick as Europeans, all hell will break loose, and we must demonstrate that to everyone, just like you said, not just to also to people outside great cities.
Do you people know how to talk to people who do not live in Bucharest or Cluj or wherever where it's big Mamaia beach? How do you talk to people in the villages who maybe do not even watch the evening news or who maybe do not even read the daily newspapers? My native village is on the Czech-German border in the Sudeten. And the people like me because every time they need something to be arranged, a sewage for the village or a UPC signal, I arrange it for them. So the mayor loves me and the people like me and I am a nice person. But they voted 75% for this horrible oligarch who is now our prime minister, the Slovak Mr. Secret Services agent before 89, Babiš, who owns half of the Czech media. And when I asked them in the pub why, they said, that guy knows how to make our life better, unlike you people from Prague. Unlike that Václav Havel of yours. You were making promises, and what became of it? And I was like, well, you can travel everywhere, your children can study in Europe, you can do whatever you want. If you decide, you can be a carpenter in Spain or Portugal. And they were like, she really is.
No, my point is, I think a lot about what is Europe useful for. And to my mind, the key question is, what does Europe bring to young people? And my answer to that is what is important for young people these days? And what I think is important for young people is the freedom of movement. And so the fact that we have Schengen, the fact that we have cheap airlines. Ryanair just sent me an advertisement this morning asking me where do I want to fly to from Bucharest for 19 euros and 99 cents. The fact that we have no roaming charges, implying that I can phone Prague and Brussels from here for my Brussels rate of payment on my mobile phone. And the fact, crucially, that we have Erasmus, which allows people to study here, there and everywhere, take a junior year abroad and go to Portugal to follow that carpenter of Monica's. These are four key aspects that are a daily contribution of the European Union to the lives of young people, seems to me. Because the fundamental contribution of the European Union to the lives of people everywhere is no longer recognized, as being important. That contribution having been that it was the European Union that was built for and accomplished the fact that since 1945 there has not been a war among its members. That is taken, a peace in Europe is being taken so for granted that the question to the European Union is, what have you done for me today? And what the European Union has done for you today are these 4 or 5 critically important aspects for the lives of young people. Did I answer your question? Did you even?
And it implies a question if people like you, my daughter Emma, who is 30, her partner Jordi, who is Israeli but feels European, if you would be willing to defend this idea of Europe that we take for granted. I hope you would, because when I see the crowds in Bratislava today and in Prague, and when I see my 13-year-old son Tomík, who is waving the Czech flag, but then he's looking for half an hour to get a European flag from somebody, because there were fewer European flags for sale than Czech ones. And Tomík so much wanted to have the European flag, and because his father is Irish, he told him, "Daddy, you should have brought the Irish flag to Wenceslav Square in Prague." Can you imagine? And Peter was like, and Tomík said, he's 13, and he said, "I would want to show that the Czechs and the Irish and that we are, and that Jordi here, who is Israeli, but it doesn't matter, that we are all Europeans." And it was so heartbreaking. I was so moved. It was his first demonstration, and he was like, something changed in his head. And so I bought him a diary for his birthday now, because I started at the age of 14, and I thought Tommy could start now.
We have a question here, or a comment? Okay, then we'll take.
I heard you both talking about the fact that the oligarchs have a lot of power, and I couldn't help but thinking about Noam Chomsky's observation when he's saying that from a totalitarian regime, there is a very, with a lot of easiness, people have switched to the system of power, the Darwinist system, the capitalist, right? So I was wondering if both of you thought about this. How much awareness do you feel around your environment, in what groups of people, about this new form of oppression, which is definitely more subtle, maybe because of propaganda, and what do you observe as things to be done, like what people are doing about it? Yeah, please.
Again, the history repeats itself. I think I read a lot now about the 20s and 30s, which in Czechoslovakia, it was the first republic, the first independent state that was democratic, that in the figure of Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk, who had an American wife and who had direct access to American diplomats and politicians. He was a very emancipated figure, and Czechoslovakia was an island to which people were fleeing from Germany, Jews when they started being persecuted, and people from other countries when in Hungary it started going wrong, and in Poland, etc. And that's why I think Hitler needed to take over Czechoslovakia, because that was a very dangerous little island threatening him. And when you look at it today, the same things have to be done, basically. We have to stick to values and standards that we set for ourselves, like people in 1918 who were founding these new states and new democracies with some ethic and some moral, and it brought this incredible flourishing of literature and music and art in general that we are interested in. It is very similar situation today. If we do not defend the standards of democracy, human rights, refugees, freedom of speech, artistic creation, etc., we may fall into something that will be not Nazism or communism, but as you say, it will be more subtle and more comfortable for the people in the little villages like mine, but equally dangerous. So personally, I am in a difficult situation because I think I am by nature a social democrat. I am for social justice, I am for equality, I do not like these arrogant, hyper-rich people who own our media now. That's why I work for public Czech television and not for the private ones. But the idea of social democracy or socialism is so contaminated and discredited by the Communist Party that it's very difficult. Social democracy in Czechoslovakia or in both Czech and Slovak Republic. Fico is supposedly a Slovak social democrat.